Yo, how's it going? In today's video, I have our updated Ball Lightning Sorcerer for you guys. This build has changed a lot since our last iteration last week. It has gotten significantly stronger. I've tested out a bunch of different things, and I'm really happy with how this is feeling. There's also a little bit of flexibility with some of the aspects that we can use, which we'll get to a little bit later. But right now, this is great for just flying through Nightmare Dungeons. This build is so fast once you get the right pieces. You can just be teleporting around everywhere, and you're going to be moving faster than like most rogues who are expecting to move speed and things like that once you are good to go. The nice part is we are only using one unique, and it is not 100% necessary. It is very, very helpful, especially with some of the changes that we've made from last version to this version. But overall, this build is very easy to put together. There was nothing that really took me an insane amount of time to get. I was actually blown away with how tanky this build can actually be, because you're always going to have barriers going. You're always going to have the enemies around you CC'd. So you can just sit there right in the middle of groups of very high level enemies and just be chilling. The only times I really ever die with this build is with modifiers and I'm not really paying attention, and that's about it. The enemies really don't seem to kill me very often. Like I said, it's mainly just like the modifiers, like the Stormbane's rat, the big hammer rock thing. That is pretty much the only thing that ends up killing me. I've watched some Ice Shards Sorcerer gameplay here recently just to see how this compares to it, and I think this is at minimum right on par, and in some cases even better than Ice Shards, which is really surprising considering Ice Shards is basically all anybody's running on Sorcerer. So if this looks like something that's fun and you guys want to get off Ice Shards, this is definitely going to be something you want to give a go. I've been having a blast with this. This is honestly how I was kind of hoping my rogue would feel, just fast, constantly just nuking huge groups of enemies. This thing just feels so good. Like always, I will have the build doc in the description, so if you guys want to check that out on our website, make sure you guys go on over there. That's where you can follow through with all of these skills, and I can also give you guys some extra information with some of the parts of the build. But otherwise, let's go ahead and start looking at this build. With these builds, I like to start off looking at our skills and then also whatever our class's special thing is. So in our case, enchantments. So going down the line, our first ability that I like to run is Flame Shield. This is going to be very huge for survivability. You're just straight up immune for a couple seconds when you activate it, which is so nice. And then the big part is you also get a little bit of movement speed, which is helpful. But the main thing is that with an aspect on our build, we're going to be able to make enemies immobilized, and that's going to be a huge damage increase once they are immobilized. So this is fantastic for both survivability and damage. Teleport, great for movement, great for as an unstoppable skill, great for damage reduction and grouping enemies with our unique chest piece. So this is just a must. Frost Nova is going to be our main source of vulnerable, because sadly Sorcerer does not have a lot of ways of doing it. If you're going to be applying vulnerable on this character, it's usually going to end up being through ice. So Frost Nova is going to be that for us, but we are going to have two of them with this build, which is helpful. And obviously the CC is going to be great for our survivability and damage. And then we're going to be running Unstable Currents as our ultimate. This is going to allow us to just spam out every single shock ability you guys have. It's going to increase your attack speed so you can get out even more and greatly increase your DPS. And then as our basic, we're going to be using Arc Lash. This is going to be combined with Ball Lightning. You're going to be spamming both of these buttons a lot with this build. As you guys are grouping up the enemies, you're going to have the balls orbiting around you to deal just passive damage, while your Arc Lashes are dealing a good amount of damage. And these combined just ends up with a huge DPS increase. With this build, you're really going to want to be in your Unstable Currents as much as you can. If you guys are going to be pushing up nightmares and you're going into a big group of enemies, make sure you have this ready to go. And how we're going to be able to have that more often is with our Ball Lightnings, and then also the ultimate. We're going to be creating a ton of Crackling Energies, which actually put out really good damage. They actually got buffed recently by, I think it was 5%. So it's not anything too crazy, but once you guys get your CCs stacked up, the Crackling Energies actually start to hit pretty hard. I've seen them hit for like 70, 100K a tick, and they can hit everything around you. So it is actually really good for clearing out groups of enemies. But now for our enchantments, pretty much every sorcerer build is going to be running Firebolt, so we can make them burning and get Devouring Blaze, which is a skill in our skill tree. We're going to get to that here in a moment, but that's just a guaranteed way to make them burn. And then we're going to also be using the Teleport enchantment. I actually put out a video entirely on this enchantment yesterday, and it is just so good when you combine it with the Raiment chest piece. This thing's gonna allow you guys to get essentially 5 teleports once you get the right pair of boots, And every one of these teleports is going to group enemies for you, stun them, and give you that 30% damage reduction for 3 seconds. So it's just so powerful to have 5 of those, and it just makes your clear speeds go up as well. Quickly running through our skill tree, we're going to max out Arc Lash and then grab Glinting Arc Lash for the extra cooldowns. We're going to throw 1 point into Firebolt just so we can equip it as our enchantment. In core skills, all we're really going to be grabbing is the base version of Chain Lightning, and then grabbing Destructive Chain Lightning. This way, when we're in our ultimate, we can create a ton of crackling energies, which are going to be great for getting mana back. Also, it's going to give us extra damage with some of our Paragon stuff. And then into our defensive is where we're going to grab a lot. So we're going to have Flame Shield. I have +7 for my items. I only have 1 point in here. But then we're going to move up to Shimmering Flame Shield. And then we're going to do 1 point into Teleports, 1 point into Enhanced Teleport, and 1 point into Shimmering Teleport. We're going to max out Glass Cannon, and then we have that extra one from our chest piece. But even with this, you guys are still going to be able to tank quite a bit. And then finally, Frost Nova, and then grabbing Mystical Frost Nova to make enemies vulnerable. Like I said, this is going to be our main way of doing so, and our only way of doing so. And then onto our Conjuration, we're going to be grabbing Protection so we can get to the barrier after we use our cooldown. This also works with our Teleport enchantment, so all those evades that you're doing are going to give you that barrier. And then obviously we have to put 1 point into Align the Elements to get there. And then we're going to be maxing out Conjuration Mastery, because when we're in our ultimate and we're sending out Lightning Spears, each one of those Lightning Spears is going to give us a stack of this. So I can see anywhere between like 5 and 10 Lightning Spears out at a time, depending on how lucky I get. And that's going to be a big damage increase. And then speaking of Lightning Spears, we're going to be grabbing 1 point into there and then grabbing the Invoked Lightning Spears. So all of them, when they crit, are going to stun enemies, which is going to greatly help your survivability. That way, enemies on the fringe are just going to be CC'd and not really able to damage you as you're taking out the main group. And we're going to do 1 point in Inner Flames so we can get to Devouring Blaze and maxing that out. That's where I said Immobilize is going to be a big damage increase. Since I have +3 on my amulet, it's up to 150% X crit damage if they are immobilized, which is huge. Then moving down, we're going to max out Ball Lightning and grab Wizard's Ball Lightning so we can create more crackling energies to sustain and deal extra damage to surrounding enemies. Then 1 point into Static Discharge, and then Invigorating Conduit. This way, when we pick up those crackling energies, we get more mana, and that way we can spam our Ball Lightnings. Moving down towards our ultimate section, like I said, Unstable Currents, we're going to be maxing that out, and then that way our crackling energies actually don't get consumed in there, which is very helpful, and that way we can get our cooldowns back quicker with our key passive of Overflowing Energy. Whenever the crackling energies hit an enemy, they're going to reduce your shock skill cooldowns, which includes your teleport. So you're going to be able to spam your normal teleport much more often. It does not work with the evade, sadly, but the main teleport you're going to be able to use a lot. And then our only other points in here would be Coursing Currents. We can get to the increased crit chance whenever we don't crit until we crit. So that's very helpful for just stacking that crit chance up. And then finally, Electrocution, so we can make the enemies deal 15% less damage for 6.5 seconds, which is really good when you critically strike them with the shock skill. So they're almost always going to just have that 15% damage reduction. Time to look at the gear. As always, we're going to go through our aspects and then go back through the gear again to look at the passives and other aspects of the gear. So starting off with our helmet, I have the extra charge of Frost Nova. This is great because every time you get a kill to a frozen enemy by Frost Nova, it's going to reduce its cooldown up to, I believe, it's 4 seconds. So you're always going to be able to spam these with 2 charges. You can actually stun bosses almost instantly. I'm very, very close. I think I just need a little bit more crowd control duration. But then I'm using the Raiment of the Infinite as our chest piece. This way we can pull enemies in, group them, and stun them with all of our teleports. Like I said, it works with the evades. And then on my gloves, this is the enchantment that I've been messing around with the most. And right now I have the 20% increased crowd control duration. And then while enemies are unstoppable, you deal more damage to them. When enemies are not CC'd, you're not going to be doing a lot to them on Sorcerer. So having that 50% more once they become unstoppable, if they happen to be, you're going to be able to kill them and finish them off. But also that crowd control duration is just huge for boss stuns and keeping enemies at bay. Moving down, we're going to do the stacking armor on hit. This is going to stack up to 100 very, very quickly since we're doing so many instances of damage. So that's going to be huge. And then on our boots, this is where our flame shield is going to immobilize enemies. And it's also going to let you move through them, which is a big part of our survivability and actually getting damage off. There's a lot of times when you teleport into a group, they can like CC you. So being unstoppable in there is very helpful for getting your damage out. Then on my weapon, I have the damage to stunned aspect on. On the amulet, we're going to do aspect of control, so we deal more damage to immobilized, stunned, or frozen enemies. These all stack with each other, so this is going to be a huge damage increase and why we're dealing so much to those stunned enemies. On our ring, I have the increased crit chance to injured enemies, but the main part that I like is the increased crowd control duration to while you're healthy, so that is very helpful for stunning bosses. And then we're going to deal increased damage while we have a barrier. And finally, our ball lightning orbits around us. This is just great for passive damage. Now let's look at some of the passives that I have. Crowd control duration is going to be one of your most important ones, so you can keep the enemies at bay and also apply more stagger to bosses. So as much as this as you can, the better. Otherwise, cooldown reduction is big. Like I said, you're going to want to live in your unstable currents, so having as little cooldown on that as possible is huge. And then also maximum life, just so you guys can stay alive a little bit better. So on your helmet, pants, and rings is where you're going to want maximum life. I don't have it yet on this one, but I do on this one, and I'm currently sitting at about 10,500 life, which is really, really good. And it can get about 1,000 higher once I get a new ring. And then on our gloves, I like to do attack speed, lightning crit damage, that's a big one, and also crit chance. On the pants, I do +4 to ball lightning, maximum life, like I said, and then other damage reductions, just anything defensive. On the boots, you're going to want all of the pluses to your defensive skills. So Frost Nova, Flame Shield, and Teleport, and then either mana cost reduction or movement speed is kind of up to you. The amulet is going to be a huge part of this build, so I highly recommend you guys are checking your vendors. That's actually where I got this one, and I'm currently sticking with a Sacred just because the roll on it is so good. And ideally, you're going to want +3 to Devouring Blaze, that's a big damage increase, and +3 to defensive skills. And then, like I said, you're going to want a cooldown so you can live in unstable currents. Now, this last slot, you can have a couple different options. Right now, I have Conjuration. That's not really my ideal thing. It doesn't hurt me, though. You can either have crowd control duration, or you can do +3 into mastery skills so you can increase your ball lightning damage further. That one you guys can kind of decide if you want more damage or a little bit more boss stunning capability. It's kind of up to you. And then on the rings, you're just going to want, like I said, the maximum life, and then otherwise crit chance, and then both crit damage. So lightning crit damage and just normal crit damage is going to be what you want on both rings. On our weapon, both crit damages, vulnerable, close, crit chance, all stats, or int, any of those are really going to work. Kind of just find whatever fits best for you. And then on our offhand, cooldown, crit chance, mana cost reduction, and crowd control duration is pretty much what you're going to be going for. Moving on over to our Paragon board, I have this basically set up for when I'm going to be at level 100. I've reworked this and kind of messed around with it, and this is what I have at the moment. So we're going to start with our starting board. Right now, I have Flame Feeder on here, so we deal increased direct damage to burning enemies. And like I said, everything's going to be burning because we have Firebolt on, so that's going to be a good damage increase for us. And as we move up, we're going to be into the Static Surge board right here. So stunning close enemies restores mana. It's going to be great for maintaining and spamming ball lightnings. And as our glyph, I have the charge. So picking up crackling energy gives you 5% X for 5 seconds up to 15. That's always going to be at 15 with how many we're making. And it's going to also increase your crackling energy damage. And then I move out to the right and grab damage to stunned, and then moved over to the board over here for Icefall. This is the only thing I care about in this board, so I just beelined it through to grab it so we can increase our survivability. And then otherwise, I moved out to the left. The only other thing I'm going to be doing on this board is moving up through the glyph and grabbing the more damage to stun and maximum mana up here. So that's what I'm going to be doing with my next points as I unlock them. Then we moved over to the Ceaseless Conduits node, and this way we can have our crackling energies last longer and also have them deal more damage. So I did that by going down through our conduit nodes down here. And then otherwise, as we go up through the glyphs, I have control on, so we deal increased damage to our stunned or frozen enemies, and then also deal increased damage to just general crowd control enemies. And I'm grabbing Galvanic Catalyst up here for our crackling energy damage. And as we move up, we're going to move to the Elemental Summoner board, but we don't care about that node. We're just here for the glyph slot, which I have the Adept in, so we have more damage with our ball lightning, and also they have an increased area. Then as we move to the right, I'm grabbing more maximum mana just so I can spam them more often, and attack speed because they do scale off attack speed very well, and it's just great for arc lashes. And that's finally going to move us over to our last board, which is the Burning Instinct board, and I don't care about this node either. I'm just here because it was a nice and close glyph spot, and also with really good magic rare nodes down here. So right now I have Tactician in here, so we can boost those rare nodes and also give ourselves 10% X damage after casting a defensive skill. This also works with... I'm playing the game. I'm playing the game. Oh my god. The game just booted me for being AFK, and I'm not redoing that whole Paragon board. So as I was saying, this does work with our evade teleports, so that's very helpful. And then this is also going to be boosting our damage reduction from burning enemies. Like I said, everything's going to be burning, so we're going to be able to get that. And also deal more damage to burning enemies and get ourselves a little bit extra intelligence at the moment. The only other thing I forgot to mention is over here in our Ceaseless Conduit board, we're going to be grabbing the Hunter-Killer nodes and the magic nodes around it, so we can have that increased damage to our elites and get that movement speed after killing an elite, so we can clear our dungeons quicker, and also maybe save some of our teleports so we can get to an enemy quicker without having to use it. But otherwise, this is going to be my board for level 100. So if you guys are curious what I'm running, this is it right here. Overall, I think this build is really good, and like I said, I think it rivals Ice Shards Sorc in many ways, and in some cases exceeds it. So if you guys are getting a little bored of the Ice Shards, definitely give this Ball Lightning a go. I just think it is so much fun zooming around, teleporting, and just grouping up all these enemies and nuking them. And you can actually push pretty high nightmares with it too, and I'm curious to see how high I can go once I fine-tune some things and get a little bit more practice with these higher tiered enemies. Really, the only things you got to look out for with this build is when enemies become unstoppable, or if you guys are killing any sort of like structure in a dungeon that technically can't be like CC'd. They take a little bit longer than normal, so just keep an eye out for enemies while you're taking down those. But otherwise, this build just nukes pretty much everything else. You can get almost instant boss stuns and then just burn them down with your Ball Lightnings and your unstable current ult. But if you guys did enjoy this build video, make sure to leave a thumbs up on it to let me know. Also consider subscribing for more Diablo 4 videos here very shortly. Like I said, we have the build doc over on our website, dpscheck.gg. So hopefully you guys can use that to your advantage and get a little bit more information over there. If you guys have any questions, I stream almost every single day over on Twitch, so hopefully I will see you over there. But anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya.